It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Diane Dreher. I first heard Diane speak about a year ago, just over a year ago, at the Positive Psychology Guild, and I was just taken by her wisdom, her warmth, her compassion, and I absolutely loved the talk. And then we sort of had a little meeting afterwards as well, and just such a warm, beautiful person, so generous of spirit. And so when Lee and I were speaking, and he said, do you know somebody that would like to do a talk? She was the first person that I thought of, because I thought I really, really want to hear more. So Diane is a leadership and creative positive psychologist, positive psychology coach, but also associate director, I think, at the Institute of Spirituality in California, and also the author of quite a few books. So there's I think there's the Tao of Inner Peace, which I'm reading at the moment, Tao of Womanhood, there's Inner Gardening, Tao of Personal Leadership, and Your Personal Renaissance. And also you just shared that you're in the process of writing a new book as well. So I very much look forward to reading that. So without further ado, I would like to welcome you, and I really look forward to your talk. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Romy, and I am absolutely delighted to be here. It's also exciting to realize that we're connected through space in this time, virtually, around the world, and according to the Tao, we're always connected anyway, but it's nice to be aware of that fact. So let's see. I would like to have the first slide of my here we come.
Here we go.
And we'll be looking at, there we go, ancient wisdom for today. So we'll be looking at lessons from the ancient wisdom of the Tao Te Ching to bring greater harmony to our lives and our world today. And my intention is that each one of us will take away at least one new insight from the Tao that we can apply to our lives today. There'll be time at the end for some questions and discussion, but next slide, please. Today we'll be looking at Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, Tao principles from nature, the concept of qi, or in Japanese, ki, energies, yin and yang, the two components of all reality according to the Tao, Tao problem solving, and finally Tao leadership. So for all of that to happen, we would need to begin with the next slide, please. Okay, so here we have the symbol of the Tao. And the Tao Te Ching, some of you are very familiar with Eastern philosophy, some not so much, but it amazes me that Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching over 25 centuries ago, during what was called the Warring States period in ancient China. And this was a time of change, conflict, and confusion, when the world as he had known it seemed to be collapsing. Does that sound familiar? He found renewed hope by connecting with nature, walking through the woods, observing the lessons in a mountain stream, a grove of bamboo, and the changing seasons. And what is the Tao Te Ching? It's a small book that he wrote of 81 lyric poems. And this small book has been translated more than any book in the world, with the exception of the Bible. It's inspired generations of leaders, artists, and innovators to see beyond their problems, to create new possibilities. The Tao Te Ching, literally, the title, what does it mean? The Jing in Chinese means a sacred book. And the Tao means the way or the path. It's a principle of order. It's the path of our lives. Translators have called it the single principle underlying all creation, the source of all life. The Chinese character for Tao, which you see in front of you here, combines a head on the right-hand side, representing wisdom, and then beneath it, the symbol for walking. A literal translation would therefore be to walk the path of wisdom, to combine theory with practice. And De or De means virtue or good character. And its Chinese symbol or character combines the symbols for go, straight, and the heart. So living with De or Da means to live from the heart, to live straight from the heart, to live authentically according to our own heart's wisdom. And its principles are as real today as they were 25 centuries ago. And from time to time, I get a little bit frustrated realizing that we still haven't learned some of these basic principles of Tao. However, here we are, and we are walking the path of wisdom, the path of heart. So I welcome all of you today, and together we can make a difference. The wisdom of living systems, the patterns of energy within and around us, and our energy, our insight can influence many others. There's an institute called the Heart Math Institute in Northern California, near where I live, and they actually measure people's energies. And they can tell with their instruments if we are in harmony. They call it coherence after meditating. And realizing that one coherent person can make a positive difference in the people around him or her. We'll talk more about those energies later, but our energies, I'm energized virtually by our connections right here and right now. So next slide, please. And in the next slide, what we'll see is, this is a depressing slide, why we need Tao wisdom today more than ever. You may have noticed that there's a lot of disconnection, division, discord, disharmony going on around the world. All we have to do is listen to the news or just listen to our hearts and feel how disconnected we may feel at times. This is especially true in the industrialized West. But recently, British psychologist Steve Taylor has written about our sense of disconnection in his book, which is titled Disconnection. Canadian educator Kim Samuel's research has revealed that many of us lack an essential sense of belonging. You know, we feel somehow abandoned, isolated. We don't feel that we belong to this world or to our communities. We feel perhaps that we don't have community. And in the United States, the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, warned of a public health crisis for people, an epidemic of loneliness and isolation that poses a major health threat to our collective emotional and physical health. 2 years ago in my country, the United States, people were asked how close they felt to someone else. Do you have someone in your life that you feel close to? And wow, 39% of Americans said they had at least one person that they felt close to. Now think about it. 39% said they had someone they felt close to. That means over 60% of Americans did not have someone, at least one person that they felt close to, that cared about them, that they cared about. Feeling profoundly disconnected. Furthermore, Western values affirm rugged individualism, competition, and capitalism that promote transactional relationships and view nature as a product to be used, not a process that includes us all. Well, that's all depressing. So next slide, please. We need to move on. Okay. Thank you, Lee. Lao Tzu, again, during the Warring States period in ancient China, Lao Tzu and Confucius were contemporaries. And people respond to anxiety, threat, insecurity in different ways. Confucius emphasized rules, rituals, and family values. And Lao Tzu found harmony and renewed hope in the principles of nature, saying that those who follow the Tao live close to nature. Their actions flow from the heart. In words, they are true. In decisions, just. In action, aware of the timing. So we'll be looking now at some of the Tao principles that inspired Lao Tzu, seeing how they can perhaps bring greater peace and possibility to us in our lives today. So next slide, please. Oneness. The Tao Te Ching teaches that everything in life is connected. And one verse from the Tao says that the Tao is the one. From the one come yin and yang, sunlight and shadow. From these two, creative energy. From energy, 10,000 things. That's as many as people could think of in ancient China. You know, they didn't know about millions and billions and all the rest. So 10,000 things, the forms of all creation. Everything comes from the one. Next slide, please. Now, this has always fascinated me. We, in ancient Chinese calligraphy, are part of nature. The ancient Chinese felt intrinsically connected to nature. It's hard to feel intrinsically connected to nature if you live in a city of high-rise buildings and cement all around. But in ancient China, of course, they didn't have those things. But look at what we have here. The Chinese character for person, or ren, looks like a little stick figure, the figure on the left. And then the Chinese character for big is one parallel line reaching out from that stick figure, da, which means big, which is kind of intuitive, right? When you want to say something is really big, you go like this and stretch your arms out. And then two parallel lines, the one above the da and then on top, that means Qian, nature, or the universe. But you can still see that the figure of a person is an integral part of the universe, of nature. We are all part of the one. So, next slide, please. Another depressing slide. Today we have disconnection and chronic stress. And sadly, many people today have lost this sense of being connected to the universe, to nature. Why? According to research, stress puts our brains and our bodies in an emergency reaction that bypasses our higher brain centers. Well, that's a problem. We can't see clearly. We can't think clearly if we're under chronic stress. Cortisol and adrenaline flow through our bodies. Our heartbeat and breathing rates increase. Our blood pressure rises. Our immune system, our digestive system, all of this shuts down and our muscles tense up to deal with the perceived threat. And this works really well if, you know, you're walking in the woods and all of a sudden there's a rattlesnake and you need to jump out of the way, or you're walking across the street and a speeding car is aiming at you, you need to jump out of the way. But most of the issues that we have to deal with can't be solved by fight, flight, or freeze, emergency stress reactions. You can't run away from your taxes, from a disagreement with a coworker, from any kind of challenge, from a technology problem. Fight, flight, or freeze doesn't work with computers. Okay. So when stress becomes chronic, it can become problematic. It can impair our health, resulting in anxiety, depression, all kinds of inflammatory disorders, cardiovascular disease. And for today, not only that, but stress, since it shuts down our higher brain centers to deal with an emergency, we're unable to hear, understand, and relate to the people around us. Stress can impair our judgment, triggering defensive reactions and resistance whenever someone disagrees with us. All of a sudden, fight, flight, or freeze, right? Instead of, maybe I should try to understand this person. It can weaken our memory and our cognitive ability so that we can't recognize patterns of cause and effect, engage in long-range planning, or see the larger implications of our actions. And ultimately, stress can sabotage our relationships with nature, ourselves, and one another. So please, next slide, please, Lee. This is getting moving on from the stress. There is the healing power of nature, which I'm sure many of us have experienced firsthand. Lao Tzu realized so many centuries ago that nature can be tremendously healing. And there have been lots of studies that show that walking in nature can relieve stress, anxiety, and depression. And research has also shown that connecting with nature in what the Japanese call Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, can help relieve stress, anxiety, depression, activate our immune system, renew our peace of mind, and it doesn't take long. Walking around in a forest for 15 minutes, one study showed, and then the people for another 15 minutes simply breathed in the green power of nature. Only a half an hour can have these effects. And I would imagine that many of the people on this call have experienced forest bathing for ourselves. So you know what I'm talking about. Now, okay, that is wonderful. But we don't even need to go into a forest to experience the healing power of nature. Years ago, in the United States, in a Philadelphia hospital, there were patients who'd had abdominal surgery, observed by a researcher called Roger Ulrich. And half of the patients had a view of trees outside their windows. And the other patients on the other side looked out at only bare brick walls outside their windows. Well, the surgery patients with the view of trees suffered from fewer complications, needed less pain medication, and were discharged earlier than the patients who looked out at the brick walls. Everything else was the same. It was a perfect controlled experiment, only it wasn't, designed that way. He just observed it. They had the same doctors, the same surgery, the same hospital food, the same nurses, the same everything. The only difference was the view outside their windows. So if you get a chance today, and for some of you it's night, so tomorrow, and just look out your window. And if you have green trees growing out there, so much the better. Otherwise, you may need to step outside. Connecting with nature can inspire us and expand our perspective, as well as to heal us physically. And poets who've written about experiencing the sense of awe, a sense of oneness, inspiration, and connection with nature include Thoreau, Emerson, Wordsworth, Lao Tzu, and many others. How many of you have experienced a sense of awe, just a sense of oneness, an expansive sense of connection when walking in the woods, seeing a glorious sunset like the one on the slide, or gazing at the stars overhead? And recently, University of California, Berkeley psychologist Dacher Keltner has discovered that experiencing awe can bring us greater health, hope, and inner peace. Feelings of awe have also inspired generations of scientists. Albert Einstein once said that the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It's the source of all true art and science. Carl Sagan, American astrophysicist, would express ecstatic wonder at the cosmos, saying, and it's true actually, that we are star stuff. Our bodies are made of the very elements of the stars. And astronaut Edgar Mitchell felt a sense of universal connection as he looked out at the vast blackness of space, at the small, beautiful blue planet we call home. So, next slide, please. And I'm going to have a little tea. The next principle is nature's cycles. The Tao tells us that 10,000 things, again, that's a big number back then, move around you. In detachment, perceive the cycles. Watch each return to the source. Returning to the source is harmony with the way of nature. Knowing the cycles brings wisdom. Not knowing brings confusion. Well, we can develop greater inner peace and greater peace around us by realizing that we are all part of nature's patterns of growth and development that renews itself in cycles, moving from day to night, summer to fall, winter, and a springtime of renewal. And recognizing our own inner rhythms can lead to greater self-acceptance, self-compassion as well. We each have our own circadian rhythms. Some of us are morning people, some of us are night people, some of us somewhere in between. And judging ourselves in comparison to others, which of course social media tries to promote, the Tao says this is ridiculous because we each have our own cycles. Nature has its own cycles. Daffodils bloom in early spring, while chrysanthemums bloom in autumn. And roses, shall I compare thee to a summer's day, bloom in the summertime. We each have our own time of blossoming and fruition, and to acknowledge who we are as unique parts of this incredible cosmic symphony of life is really important. No, we don't need to be like someone else. That person is already like that. We need to discover who we are and be that to the best of our ability, according to the wisdom of Tao. Next slide, please. And then there's this lesson. We cannot rush the cycles. I cannot believe this was written. I mean, my cognitive mind cannot believe this was written 25 centuries ago. But here we go. Why do so many people rush about reactively losing their balance? They give way to emotion, impatience, and haste, thereby losing their center. Now, if people 25 centuries ago in ancient China would rush around being impatient, losing their center, Lao Tzu would be amazed at all the impatient rushing that happens in our world today, just trying to get all these things done and rush from one thing to the next. This is unwise because rushing and impatience put us in a stress state, tells our body somehow we've got to rush. We must need to be afraid of something. We must feel threatened. It narrows our focus, makes us anxious, shuts down our higher brain centers, making us less effective in everything we do. So we need to honor the cycles, and we cannot rush the cycles. One year in California, I decided in September that I was going to plant tomatoes because, of course, California is sunny all the time, and why not, right? Well, that didn't work. Even in California, we do have our seasons, and there are vegetables that flourish in the summer, tomatoes being one of them. And there are vegetables like snow peas that do better in the cooler months of the year. And, we need to honor the cycles in our gardens and in the gardens of our lives. Next slide, please. Well, now, I could go on about this for a long time, but 2 slides. In Western culture, we seem to have a very limited view of strength. Strength in the West too often means to be tough, firm, unyielding, aggressive, right? And we sometimes see this and seek this in our leaders, which is perhaps why we don't have so much harmony in our world. But last year, we had a lot of storms in California, and many of the large trees in my neighborhood fell down in the storms. The Tao teaches the strength of bamboo, which bends with the wind so it doesn't break. It's the strength not of being firm and unyielding, like some of the trees that fell down, but the strength to be flexible. And the Tao says, if your plan is inflexible, it cannot succeed. Unable to bend, the tree will break. So sometimes when we confront an obstacle or a challenge, instead of just pushing back and being firm and tough, to recognize that there is this strength of bamboo that can help us. Next slide, please. And then another form of strength in the Tao is the power of water. The Tao tells us nothing on earth is more gentle and yielding than water. Water nurtures all of life, yet nothing is stronger. When it confronts a wall of stone, gentleness overcomes hardness. The power of water prevails. Water is essential for life. And in some parts of the world, we're recognizing this more than ever with global warming. But also, water with perseverance can cut through solid rock. It takes years, but I stood on the edge of the Grand Canyon in Arizona in the United States, looking down at this incredible canyon that was carved by the river below. So the power of perseverance is another form of strength that the Tao affirms. Next slide, please. Then there's our interconnectedness. The Tao tells us, without the one, the heavens would fall, the earth would die, the spirits would mourn, the valleys dry up, the 10,000 things perish, and only discord remain. In college, when I was in college, I saw my first view of Earth from outer space. Look at that. Isn't that incredible? That's our planet. That's our home. Without borders or boundaries, you don't see the different countries there. You just see that we're all one. A glowing gem in the blackness of space that inspired astronaut Edgar Mitchell to found the Institute of Noetic Sciences to explore our interconnectedness on all levels. To create new patterns of peace to deal with the crisis of climate change, we need to recognize our interconnectedness with nature and one another. And mistakes happen when people ignore this lesson of oneness, of interconnectedness. I describe one wild example in my book, The Tao of Inner Peace. In the 1950s, the World Health Organization tried to eliminate malaria in southern Borneo by spraying the pesticide dieldrin to kill the mosquitoes that carried the disease. And at first, the project seemed a great success. Mosquitoes and the malaria disappeared. Villagers were no longer bothered by flies and cockroaches. But then, somehow, their roofs began falling in on them, and they had a typhus epidemic. Oh, how did this happen? Well, since everything is interconnected, the lizards died from eating the poisoned insects, and then the local cats died from eating the lizards. And without the cats, rats came into the village and ran rampant, carrying typhus-infested fleas on their bodies. And later, to add insult to injury, the villagers' thatched roofs began falling in and collapsing because the pesticide had killed the wasp and other insects that had fed on the caterpillars that fed on the thatched roofs. And so the caterpillars ate the roofs and the roofs fell in, and the villagers were very unhappy. And the Tao Te Ching teaches that everything is connected, which is a lesson that the World Health Organization needed to learn and were forced to acknowledge way back when. Next slide, please. The next principle of Tao is energy, which is qi in Chinese, as in Tai Chi or Qigong, and ki in Japanese, as in Reiki or Aikido. Same thing. Practices that focus and channel our energy for healing, or in the case of Aikido, a nonviolent martial art that turns conflict into harmony. The Tao tells us that everything is energy. The great Tao is everywhere, flowing left and right. The 10,000 things flow from it. Seen with detachment, it appears infinitely small, the energy that flows through all creation. It appears infinitely small, the energy that flows through all creation. Did Lao Tzu know somehow intuitively about particle physics, atoms, these infinitely small bits of energy that compose all of life? Apparently. Okay. And as I said earlier, research at the HeartMath Institute in California has measured how energy affects those around us. Have some of you experienced a boost of energy around some people? When you walk into a room, there's all this energy? Or felt your energy drained around someone else? This is not an illusion. It's been measured. And the HeartMath Institute has even measured the energy exchange between a boy and his dog, okay, and a girl and her horse. The animals around us, the people around us, and the plants around us, as measured by some research at the University of Arizona. Everything is connected in a field of energy. Next slide, please. So now we have the wisdom of the seasons. The Tao moves by returning in endless cycles. By yielding, it overcomes, creating 10,000 things, being from non-being. There is a sense that in the Tao Te Ching, as Lao Tzu observed many, many centuries ago, that there are progressions of the seasons. And a number of years ago, W. Edwards Deming, an American engineer, developed a concept called total quality management, applying the 4 seasons to manufacturing, to invention, to production. He said, in the spring you plan, in the summer you do, in the fall you finish the job, and in the winter you reflect, you learn what went well, what could we improve, and you plan again for the next cycle to improve. And you have total quality management as the quality improves as you continue to learn from the process. Sounds like a great idea, so he took it to the US automobile industry in Detroit in the 1950s. And they said, we don't need this. We're going to put the same car engines in our cars for next year. We just make bigger fins or different color, different kinds of bumpers and, different body design. But essentially, we can just crank this thing out. And he was disappointed. So he went to Japan, which had been pretty devastated by World War II. And they listened. And their cars' gas mileage improved consistently across the years because they would use that 4th season, the season of reflection, asking, how did it go? What can we learn from this? What can we do better? And not only did the gas mileage of some of these Japanese cars improve, but then they challenged Americans to try to improve their gas mileage too. I have a friend, Jerry Lynch, who has written some books on the Tao, who's a sports psychologist. He works with different athletic teams from intercollegiate to Olympic. And at the end of a game, after they've trained, played, finished the game, he gets them together and asks them two questions. First question, what went well? Not what went wrong. You don't begin with that. Okay, what went well? And then he says, question number two, what needs work to take it to the next level? So it's all very optimistic. You know, you look at what you did well, you want to continue doing that. But what little adjustment could we make to do even better next time? Using that fourth season of reflection, introspection, questioning, you know, and planning, learning from the process. Again, that's the wisdom of Tao. Next slide, please. This is a very short quote from the Tao, but a very deep one. The Tao tells us that wise people seek solutions. The ignorant only cast blame. I don't know about you, but whenever there's a problem, how often do we hear people shaming and blaming each other, divided against each other, when they could come together to solve the problem? I had a funny experience when I was in grad school working as a receptionist in an orthopedic surgeon's office in Santa Monica. One day, when the office was filled with patients and there was a lot of commotion, there were workers laying new carpets in some of the examining rooms, and they used an iron to seal the carpet down on the floor. Well, the workers went to lunch, and I smelled smoke. So I walked into the examining room and noticed that they'd left one iron that was plugged in and that was on like this, burning down into the floorboard. So I set the iron upright and pulled the plug and went back to my desk and kept doing my work. And then the doctors smelled smoke. And the doctors came out yelling at the nurses, who did this? Who should have checked the examining rooms? And the nurses yelled at the technicians. And you know, all this yelling was going on. And I was sitting there thinking, why are they all just yelling? You know, the point was not shaming and blaming. The point was to solve the problem, which in this case was as simple as pulling the plug. Well, in far too many conflicts, from interpersonal to international, people can become so busy blaming others and defending their egos that they forget to solve the problem, which in this case was pretty simple, and which in international problems, well, is a challenge for all of us. Stop shaming and blaming, stop dividing, start working together. Next slide, please. Now, some of you, this looks like a familiar symbol, yin and yang, right? The two fish swimming in opposite directions. The Tao is the one, we learn from the Tao Te Ching. From the one come yin and yang, sunlight and shadow. From these two creative energies, from energy 10,000 things, the forms of all creation, all life embodies yin and embraces yang, through their union, achieving harmony. Through their union, achieving harmony. Well, Western culture too often forgets this, perhaps we didn't learn it, and polarizes these opposites, traps us into the false dilemma of one extreme or the other, either or, all or nothing, right or wrong, your way or my way, which only gives us two choices, which is pretty reductive given the complexity of our lives. We only have two possibilities, all or nothing, win or lose. When I was a junior in college, I learned this lesson the hard way. One spring of my junior year, one spring night, my boyfriend proposed to me under the stars. It was very romantic. He was a senior graduating that spring, and he was concerned about his future. So he proposed, and I said, of course, yes, he was the first love of my life. And he said, good, now that we've gotten that settled, you'll drop out of school and work so I can go to grad school. And I said, what? Why can't we both go to grad school? And he said, you're being selfish. And he broke up with me that night. That was pretty much an emotional roller coaster. One night, all or nothing, right? But it didn't have to be that way. There were other choices we could have had we worked together and recognized that he could have worked for a year, saved his money, and then we could have gone to grad school together. We could have gone to grad school, worked part-time, gotten fellowships or student loans. Again, there were other possibilities. Well, but obviously we could not go on together in life because it was all or nothing. And since I would not choose the all, I got nothing. And we went our separate ways. It's important to recognize that yin and yang are two parts of a larger process. And that instead of digging in our heels and getting into all or nothing, we can find new possibilities if we brainstorm, if we listen, and if we learn together. Next slide, please. Okay, so in my workshops, I often ask participants to find a larger whole that includes both opposites, because I feel like maybe what we need is to exercise our ability to see yin and yang as part of a larger whole. So here's a challenge. We can just sort of think about it in our own minds and think of one larger concept that includes both opposites. The first one, night and day. What includes both night and day? Well, could be today. Monday. There is a Monday night and there is a Monday day. And they're both part of a larger whole. How about mountain and valley? They seem like opposites. And yet, mountain and valley are both part of the landscape. Then we have water and stone. One is very hard and one is very soft. Okay. What includes both water and stone? Well, this is easy for me because I live by a little creek, and a mountain stream includes both water and stones. And I like to go up walking by that little creek and look at the water sparkling, the sunlight sparkling on the stones through the water, including both in the larger whole. Okay, big question, open and closed. What can be both open and closed? Flowers, yay, Romy. Yeah. A door, right? A hand. A heart. A mind. And then there's listening and speaking. Eyes can be open and closed too. Great. Yeah, right. We had some real Tao ideas here. Listening and speaking. What is one concept that includes both listening and speaking? Yay, communication. Yes. You know, singing. We can't communicate if we're only listening. The other person doesn't know what we think. And we can't communicate if we're only speaking, because then we don't know what the other person thinks. So, all right. So what's this lemon doing over here on the right-hand side of my slide? Here we have an opportunity to experience a kind of a challenge, right? Imagine that we're all going to a retreat in the mountains. So we stop at the bottom of the mountain. We're in a bus, or what they call a coach, I think, in the UK. Anyway, we're in a coach, and we stop at the bottom of the mountain to get food. And we've all brought our favorite recipes, and we're going to cook them for our friends up there at, at the top of the mountain in this beautiful cabin retreat. So up we go, an hour and a half up the mountain road. And that night, we're preparing dinner with some of our favorite foods. Well, we're having salad, rice, lemon chicken, and lemon poppy seed cake. So some people are chopping up the vegetables they've gotten for the salad, and others are making the rice. And one person is making the lemon chicken, and the other person is there at the counter making the lemon poppy seed cake. And they reach for the lemon on the counter, and there's only one lemon. And they both need lemon for the recipes. So what are our choices? We can fight over the lemon, say, I need this lemon, all or nothing, win or lose. Okay, your way or my way. So one person's recipe falls short, and the other person has a good recipe. What else could we do? One thing a lot of people will suggest is to share, okay? Share can happen in a couple of ways. One common way of sharing is to compromise, to cut the lemon in half. And that means each person would have a recipe that was half as good, but it wasn't all or nothing. It's better than, better than all or nothing, win or lose. But maybe we can create a new recipe. That's a possibility, right? Do something different, or else we could listen to each other. Because one recipe, the lemon chicken needs the lemon juice, okay? Say, I need lemon juice. And the lemon poppy seed cake needs the lemon zest, which is to grate off the skin of the lemon and put that into the recipe. Oh, really? So one person then grates the skin off the lemon, hands it to his or her friend, and that person uses the juice, and it's a win-win, and they both benefit. Take care, Leah. So the lesson here is to listen to each other, communicate, share, recognize that it doesn't need to be all or nothing, win or lose. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a compromise where you both get less than what you need. We may be able to get what we need by recognizing what we need and working to make that happen together. So, next slide, please. And here we have Tao leadership as empowerment. The leadership of the Tao incorporates this larger vision of including everyone in the process. There's a quote from the Tao that I really love. With the best of leaders, When the work is done, the project completed, the people all say we did it ourselves. Tao leadership is inclusive, welcoming everyone's contributions, working together. And humanistic psychologist Carl Rogers carried this quote from the Tao in his wallet. He was a therapist who believed that the therapist and the client together could come up with the solutions, that listening and learning together was an important, indeed, a vital part of the therapeutic process, which is why he developed active listening, which therapists still use. He also worked with others in international conflict areas in what was Carl Rogers' Peace Project, bringing together people who were in conflict to listen and learn from each other and to create solutions. And I wish that we had more of the Carl Rogers Peace Project in our world today. Because I can see what's in front of me, but I can't see what's behind me. Each one of us can see only from our own limited perspective, but when you put all of us together, we can see multiple possibilities. And that's what true leadership empowers groups of people to do, to each offer their own best perspective and to come up with many facets, many possibilities, and new solutions for the complex problems of our time. Next slide, please. The Tao. This is a path in the woods near my house. The Tao says, to focus our senses, untangle the problem, balance sunlight and shadow, blend with the path. This is the way of Tao. That it's the process of discovery as we walk the path and learn from that process as more possibilities are revealed to us by being present with that process. In harmony with nature, in harmony with our deepest selves, and in harmony with each other. And next slide, please. So here is my favorite redwood tree out here in California. And my favorite quote from the Tao Te Ching. A tree that grows beyond your reach springs from a tiny seed. A building over 9 stories high begins with a handful of earth. And a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. We can each take that step to create greater harmony within and around us. And with one lesson, just one principle of the Tao, moving forward with that step can make a major difference in our own paths going forward. So we now have time for questions and discussion.
Thank you very, very much, Diane. I really enjoyed that talk. There were so many things that I was writing down and sort of jotting and making a note of. I really appreciated that. Thank you very, very much. And now that we're open for questions, I can see that Mick Collins, you've got your hand up. If I'd like to, oh no, you haven't. That's my hand. I very nearly picked on you there.
Lovely.
But if anyone has any questions or comments that they'd like to share, I mean, there was one thing that was actually quite a few things, but I think one of the things that I noticed in the very beginning, I was jotting down when you showed the symbol of the person and then the symbol of nature, and I was looking at the symbols and I sort of could see the person within the nature, but I thought that it felt like it was walking. So it actually felt like the symbol was walking and it was in motion. So it was as if it's a person in motion with nature. And that just sprung to mind as I looked at the symbols themselves. And then obviously you were talking so much about the path and being as one with nature. And I thought how that blends and how the characters really blend. And I'd never looked at Chinese writing in such a way before, which is the way of the communication, isn't it?
Oh, great. Yeah. Chinese characters are each like little poems, the calligraphy, because they incorporate different concepts within the main concept. And I absolutely love the fact that the symbol for human being is part of the symbol for nature. And, they knew that then, but then they had a lot more daily interaction with nature than we do, given just the fact that we live in industrialized societies that they could probably never dream of.
And that was one of the other things that when you were talking about the seasons, going with the seasons, and it made me think about pre-industrial revolution. We worked within the seasons because we didn't have electricity. So we basically lived and worked with the seasons. So we didn't stay up late watching television with all the lights on because there wasn't that around. But we also equally didn't work past the sort of sunlight basically, unless we had candles. So then you had the different things. So yeah, so that I thought that was very apt as well, far how far we've come in our sort of disconnect from nature through the advent of technology. So
Oh, absolutely, Romy. There's research that shows that when people are looking at their screens late at night, that light, that blue light, just tells their brains that it's daylight. And then they can't go to sleep once they turn off their phones or computers or whatever. So that electricity, made a difference years ago. And now we've got these electronic devices that even more interfere with our basic circadian rhythms. So a lot of people don't get enough sleep, which of course makes them very imbalanced because of the fact that we're working against the cycles in a personal and also a natural way. Yay.
Lee, I can
Like,
see you have your hand up.
Thank you. Diane, first of all, can I say thank you for such a gentle, beautiful and wise words that were shared in that talk. And I think you can see that Taoism is a philosophy, perhaps is a way of describing it, that really speaks to my heart and to my explorations in this space of spirituality, ecology and mental health. I think as I've gone forward on this journey, I become acutely aware of, and you mentioned it many times tonight, this Western view. I'm born in the UK, I'm born into this community, this culture, this way of being and living in the world. And yet, as I'm exploring Taoism and these practices around it, I'm reminded that this has come from a very different cultural perspective. I suppose my question then is what things could you suggest? How might I and others go about breaking down the boundaries of that Western view and step into living perhaps from this very different perspective? And when I say live it, I really do mean live it. It's a very different way of being.
wow. That is incredible. Thank you, Lee. And I believe that this is what you are doing in the Buckinghamshire New University Master's Program, is helping people break down the barriers between self and other, between person and natural process, and to recognize that our spirituality, our mental health, and our sense of oneness with nature are all the same. There's all this research that shows that when we spend time in nature, it's healing physically and emotionally. So I would encourage people to spend some time in nature, whatever that is possible, whatever that looks like. Even if you live in an apartment, you can put a bird feeder outside your window and watch the birds come. You can take a walk outside. You can go outside and look at the stars. To every day, just pause in order to connect intentionally with nature, because we have to intentionally connect with nature. We're not an agrarian society anymore. And then to realize that my second I guess, piece of advice is to look for yin and yang, look for opposites being part of a larger whole. Because I think that one of the big problems in the West is that we've separated ourselves from nature. We see it as a product to be used. And we can relate to other people that way too, transactionally. What can this person do for me? And instead of realizing that we're connected, you know, this expanded sense of self, that someone else's happiness, health, life is intimately connected to mine, that I'm part of something larger than my ego. The Western world reinforces us for ego. The expansive world of philosophy and spirituality helps us see, it doesn't block our ego, it expands it. It makes us aware that we're part of this larger world. So the sense of awe that we can get from being out in nature expands our egos beyond ourselves. And the sense of looking for, you know, the reconciliation of opposites, looking for the yin and yang working together, looking at the landscape, looking at the earth and sky, and seeing how the two are part of the one, to just intentionally expand our point of view, I think.
Beautiful, thank you. We've just come back from a nature immersion at a forest centre, and for some people that was a very different experience. For some people it was their first time of camping and being out there. So, you know, I'm really taking that to heart. There's this thing of immersing in an environment, in a space that is natural and also perhaps very different to our own. Perhaps that's the yin and yang that we can find, is go out there and engage in environments that are sometimes different to our own perspective, such as Taoism, if you come from that Western perspective. Thank you.
That's wonderful that you've just done that, because that's exactly, you know, that takes us away from our very narrow way of looking at things and realize, oh, there's this whole world of nature that I'm part of.
Thank you, Sandra.
Okay.
Thank you. Nick, please feel free to join.
Thanks, Diane. I'm sorry I came in late, but we had a vet crisis. We had to get a cat to the vet. So bringing in the animals and nature and trees. What's your take on listening to the wisdom in nature, to the animals and the trees and as part of the Tao?
I totally believe in it. What I was thinking the other day is that animals, you know, we have this highly developed prefrontal cortex, you know, ego, analytical brain. We can plan ahead. My dog and my cat don't do that. They live in the present moment. Yeah. They're very Buddhist and Taoist. And they also don't hold grudges. You know, they're always glad to see me. Whereas a human being will think, well, the last time we got together, you know, and we have all, so we can learn a lot being present from our animal neighbors. And, you know, just that sense of presence, which again, our ego can block out. We can worry, we can feel anxious, we can get caught up in planning, which all takes us away from being present now. And I hope your cat is okay.
Yeah, got to find out a little bit more in a minute. My wife's just come back, but yeah, I'll do an update tomorrow. The other thing was as well that I don't know if you've come across the work of Anna Breyenbach, who speaks with the animals, and there's a lovely little video on YouTube called about a panther that she worked with called Spirit, and it was very unhappy, this panther, and she communicated with it, and it changed its behavior immediately once it knew that it was being respected and understood. And it's just, it transformed my thinking about the relationship to animals and also to trees and plants, you know. But yeah, so that really chimes with what you're saying.
Yeah, again, they're our neighbors, and they can be abused. One of my friends adopted a rescue dog, and you know, had to work through, this poor dog had experienced you know, I guess a dysfunctional family in the earlier time when he was with other people. And we can help each other heal, you know, we can listen to each other. And animals know a whole lot more than we think they do.
Absolutely.
I was going to say that I do Reiki with animals, and
Oh.
one of my friends, she goes to a cat sanctuary, and once a week she goes to a cat sanctuary and she does Reiki with the cats that are there, and there's been a big difference in their behavior, in that they're actually a lot calmer now. And when she walks in, they come up to her, they sit down, and she does Reiki on them. And initially, when she went to the cat sanctuary and she just offered this, they were quite skeptical, but it was an extra pair of hands, so they thought, you know, that's fine. But they've commented and said how much they enjoy it, because it's made such a huge difference on the cats. So, and again, I think when you with Reiki and with animals, you're sitting in that still space, and it's patience. It's patience, it's communication, it's breathing, and it's almost breathing into their energy at that moment. And so all of the, and it's curiosity as well. You're curious in that moment as to what is going to happen, and you're open to it. So there were so many strands through your talk that I was sort of drawing all of these elements out of, and thinking, oh, we don't sort of, we're almost not encouraged sometimes to have that curiosity anymore, that playfulness and patience as well. I mean, even in a shopping queue, you've got people that are huffing and puffing and on their phones and moving and, you know, and rushing past you. And so patience, I think I don't say, there's a saying, patience is a virtue, but actually I don't think patience is as researched. I think it's an area of research maybe that is lacking. I haven't found a lot. I haven't really looked, but I've seen quite a lot of other research jumping out at me, but patience is not one of those. So that, I think that would be an interesting avenue to go down.
I totally agree. That's fantastic. Yeah. And Reiki, when we do Reiki, I also am a Reiki master. We channel energy through us, you know, so that when I do Reiki on someone else, whether it's a dog or a cat or a person, I'm channeling from the source, you know, from the Tao, from the one, from whatever you want to call it, so that we're, you know, and I believe that when people are inspired to create works of art or to write, they're also in touch with the source. And that's something that transcends our conscious, you know, cognitive ability to measure or describe it. But some people have actually managed to measure our energies with their devices, and I think we're going to get more into that. And I totally agree that impatience puts us into stress and blocks us, and that we need more research on patience and oneness and presence. And I'm glad you all are doing this.
Diane, I'm so thankful for tonight. I'm conscious of time, so I want to give people just one last chance to ask any questions.
Hi, I'm Jay from India.
Hi,
Hello.
Jay.
Hey, Jay.
The need of the hour is our wisdom. The wisdom of Tao must reach to our political leaders, looking to our time of wars.
Yes.
I totally share that. It is my heartfelt wish that our political leaders would recognize the wisdom of Tao problem solving, not shaming and blaming, not making an enemy out of someone that disagrees with us, but working together on the problem to create new possibilities. We can do this as human beings, but we can get so caught up in needing to blame the other person. You know, it's your fault. What does that do? That's a big waste of energy, among other things, because the problem remains unsolved. And a lot of people suffer terribly because of poor leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you stay with us for this week. Diane, you've really put us into the most wonderful space. I sort of can't help but try to draw the themes out of these discussions and these presentations. So perhaps we open the week up with ideas of energy, of alignment, of surrender, perhaps, and trying to find the balance and harmony in different situations. So what a wonderful place to start. I look forward to how this opens and continues. So we'll be here at the same time tomorrow. It's the same link, 6 till 7. We'll have Mick Collins, who's been on the call tonight.